Hi, Rob Newsom here, back again, telling you about compliance. 60% of compliance is actually the same for just about all entities. You've got to pay your taxes, you've got to pay your VAT, you've got to fill in returns for all sorts of different people. Managed with the SIB-C, if you're a registered company. And the non-compliance with those 60% of items is particularly high, as we've experienced. And we've had our own hiccups ourselves in our workplace. So how did you know that you're supposed to have a gun register? There's an act about firearms in the office. If you have a policy which says you're allowed to bring guns into the office, you're supposed to have a special safe and you're supposed to sign it in and out. Well, I've yet to see such a safe, and I don't know if anyone that I know of has such a requirement. So there's a very simple element that everybody's supposed to comply with, but they don't. There's no firearms policy. Typically, it only comes to the fore when it lands on the accounting officer's table or on the director's table, and then there's a panic. Sometimes audit committees are asked, how do you know that you're in compliance? And they then say, well, we've got the 3 lines of defense. We've got management, we've got risk and audit, and that's all fine. But really, how do you know that? Just because you've got the 3 lines of defense. Which pieces of legislation are you complying with? So it's not just about hoping and wishing. You've actually got to have a basis to say so. We've made it easy. We've pre-populated all the compliance activities that are relevant to an organization. So even if you are a gunsmith, we'll have some sort of firearms licenses in there, but that won't apply to an accounting firm. And we've got all sorts of legislation called NOCLAR and this and that applies to accounting firms which don't apply elsewhere. So we would need to make sure that each entity, where it needs to be complied with, we have the relevant activity. That activity needs to be assigned to somebody to do the work. Now, to do that work, you've got to know when to do it and what to do, what forms to send to whom. And that's where our compliance tool comes in. So you'll see an alert which says, Aniska, seeing that's a lovely name. You have a compliance requirement to do. You have got to fill in the skills levy form once a year. Here is the form, this is how you fill it in, and send it to so-and-so for approval. And that will then be marked that you've done your work. These all aggregate into what we call an obligations diary. So at any stage, you can have a look at this diary, and hopefully it's all green for all the items that you're supposed to have complied with, and obviously showing that there are certain ones to comply with going forward. So if anybody is to ask the audit committee, how do you know that you're in compliance? You just show them the diary. Here we are, this is it, done. And it's available. And that compliance obligation also will go into looking to other databases like the SIB-C databases and elsewhere where we've got to pick it up. We often look for a seamless way for compliance to be achieved, to take the sting and the effort out of it. And automation is by far the right way to go. To answer your question, we have an easy way to comply. We also make declarations easy. So if you have a conflict of interest policy, one of the things you should be doing is looking at the SIB-C database for all officers and directors to see whether they hold positions in other companies who may well in fact be suppliers to your company or your entity. So you'd need to be able to do that. So those easy declarations will actually automatically be facilitated through the SIB-C database, and even looking at the tax databases where there's tax compliance, filling in your returns, your IRP 5s and 6s and whatever else. It also allows us to adapt to changing legislation because we are staying on top of all the legislation, and any new obligations that come in, we just populate the diary so that it's there. We possibly got to say, well, who's going to do this? Not all obligations are going to be done by NISCA. Some might have to be done by TESA. So we could obviously change that. We've built this database on a proven data platform, which was in its day called Musketeer, and was applied at Eskom until about 2016, when our contract came to an end. So we now have put Musketeer onto steroids for the platform that we drive complied and easy declarations. Please contact us to find out more.